All right.
Give it just a minute and I'll call our meeting to order.
Hello, everyone.
Hey, Liz.
Hey.
And I'm impressed with Sean Murphy.
Can you hear me, Mark?
We can.
Hello.
Are you in your plane?
Yeah. The plane. You look sharp, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, sir.
But you don't look as good as Liz.
I'm still on mute. Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome.
I'll now take the opportunity to call our meeting to order. Good afternoon. Welcome to everyone, all of our attendees for the Board of Supervisors of the University of Louisiana System. And I also want to welcome the committee members who are serving to help us in the search for the next president of the University of Louisiana at Monroe. As you know, the immediate circumstances are allowing us to hold our meeting via electronic means. I'd like to advise you that the content of the public portion of today's Zoom meeting, including chat, is being recorded and subject to public records requests. So please keep that in mind as we conduct business. I'd like to thank Dr. Henderson and our staff for doing the legwork to accomplish this for us today. As we begin, Ms. Colley, will you please call roll?
Yes. Dr. Jim Henderson,
Here.
Ms. Lola Donahoe,
Present.
Ms. Rachel Laudiger,
Here.
Ms. Mime Methvin,
Here.
Mr. Sean Murphy,
Here.
Dr. Janelle McDaniel,
Here.
Mr. Al Perkins,
Here.
Ms.
Didn't call
Elizabeth
me.
Pierre,
Here.
Mr. Virgil Robinson, Mr. Margaret, Mr. Romero's here,
Here.
Mr. Joe Salter, Mr. Carl Aaron, Miss Olivia Bailey,
Here.
Mr. Dennis Blunt,
Here.
Miss Sarah Bryce,
Here.
Miss Alberta Green,
Here.
Miss Susan Hoffman,
Here.
Miss Hannah Livingston,
Here.
Mayor Mayo,
Here.
Mr. James Moore,
Here.
Mr. Jeremy Tinarello,
Here.
Dr. James Wright.
Here.
Thank you. We have a quorum.
Thank you, Erica. To the audience, be reminded that anyone who wishes to make a public comment on a particular agenda item should email their comment to publiccomment@ulsystem.edu or submit their name and affiliation via Zoom chat. Your comment will be heard at the appropriate time. In the message, please include your first and last names, as well as the item number upon which you'd like to comment. You'll be allowed to share your video, audio at the appropriate time, or if you prefer, your comment can be read by a member of the system staff. Comments are limited to 3 minutes, and I'd ask that we go ahead and conform to that. Thank you. Certification of inability to operate due to lack of a quorum is necessary today. I failed to take that in order. I need a motion and second to accept the certificate of inability to operate due to compliance with the directives of the governor, the CDC, and the local and state governing health authorities and officials. Erica,
So
if
moved,
you
Mr.
could.
Chairman.
Moved by Mr. Murphy,
Second.
second by Ms. Donahoe. All in favor?
Aye.
Mr. Chairman, I apologize, but in this setting, everyone, there has to be a roll call vote from all voting members.
Erica's going to do a roll call vote. We have a motion and a second.
Yes, sir. Miss Lola Donahoe? Miss Lola Donahoe?
Yes. Yes. Lots of feedback, Erica. Somebody's not muting their stuff.
Okay, thank you. Miss Laudiger?
Yes.
Miss Methvin?
Aye.
Mr. Murphy?
Yes.
Dr. McDaniel?
Yes.
Mr. Perkins? Miss Pierre?
Yes.
Mr. Romero?
Yes.
Mr. Salter? Mr. Salter? Mr. Salter?
He's on the phone.
Eric, I apologize. Mr. Salter is having trouble hearing. If we could have Ann McKisson reach out to him, it'd be great. Ann's going to reach out to you. Yes, sir. Thank you. Yes.
Perfect. Okay, thank you. So we have 8 yeas.
Thank you, Erica.
You're welcome.
At this point, I will turn our meeting over to the committee chair, Dr. James Henderson.
Thank you, Mr. Romero. Members, our first item of business is approval of the March 11th, 2020 Search Committee meeting minutes. I have a motion and a second to approve the minutes from the March 11th Search Committee meeting.
So moved.
Moved by
Rachel.
Rachel. Thank you, Rachel. Your video is not coming up. And a second by
Mimi Methvin, I'll second.
Thank you, Mimi. We need a vote to say aye. And Eric, I apologize. You need to call the roll again.
No problem. Ms. Donahoe?
Yes.
Ms. Laudiker?
Yes.
Ms. Methvin?
Yes.
Mr. Murphy?
Yes.
Dr. McDaniel?
Yes.
Mr. Perkins?
Yes.
Ms. Pierre?
Yes.
Mr. Romero?
Yes.
Mr. Salter? Is he still with us? Mr. Salter? Okay. Again, we have 8 yeas.
All right. So thank you very much. The minutes are approved. Committee members, our first item of discussion is on the timeline. As you recall, the timeline that you approved called for us to bring semifinalists to the ULM campus for interviews during the week of April 27th. Obviously, we're unable to do that in light of the COVID-19. Now, interviewing candidates on campus gives all stakeholders an opportunity to engage with the candidates, and it gives the candidates an opportunity to get a feel for the campus. And so it's been an integral part of our process going forward. We've presented 3 options to the committee for consideration and for discussion and consideration. The first option would be to continue with our existing schedule. Now, if you choose this option, the current restrictions related to COVID-19 would not allow for the on-campus interview process to occur as planned. So instead, the candidate conversations with the stakeholder groups, the candidate interviews by this committee, and the committee discussions and deliberations would have to occur in a virtual setting similar to the one we're in today. The interview of the finalists that you recommended in the original schedule, the interview of those finalists would be scheduled for May 18th. Now, the current COVID-19 restrictions are slated to expire by then, but we have to account for the probable continuation of at least some limitations on public gatherings. And if you look at the latest model projections, it recommends that Louisiana can consider removing social restrictions in mid-May. So it would be about that same time. But as of now, I think we should consider that the high probability that if we had those finalist interviews, it would also be in a very, very limited or restricted setting. The second option would be to move the on-campus interviews to late May or into June in the hopes that those restrictions will be lifted or sufficiently modified to allow those in-person interviews to take place. Now, if we opted for that schedule, it would allow for those interviews to take place on campus. However, the participation of several stakeholder groups would be heavily diminished. The students would not be on campus, for example. The vast majority of faculty would not be on campus. And then the third option would be to schedule the on-campus interviews for the week of August 17th. That's the first week of classes for the fall 2020 semester at ULM. And this option would allow for the broadest engagement of stakeholder groups, assuming, again, there are unknowns, but and all of the information we have now suggests that we would have that kind of meeting. The UL System Board is already scheduled to meet the following week. So the finalists you recommend to the board could be interviewed and a new president selected in time to take office on October 1st. Now, we have to consider the possibility of continued restrictions related to COVID-19 even in the month of August. But I present those to you as options to be discussed and would like to open the floor for discussion about the timeline and possible next steps.
I'd like to say something. When this issue when I got the email today raising this issue of the 3 options, My thought initially was we would get so much more out of interviewing the candidates in person. But on second thought, I read the very thoughtful communication from Katie Dawson, who's heading up our ULM online education effort. And she, in a very eloquent way, makes the case for us moving forward, pointing out that ULM already has been a leader in online education. And we have an opportunity to really become a standout if we can get our leadership up and running. Someone who is prepared to lead the university through this pandemic crisis, which it really is, then it's going to, I think, be a great advantage to the university. And I will also say, on a personal note, after thinking about it, there are many of us, especially those of us who are in the older age group, who are not going to feel comfortable, even if official restrictions are lifted. We're not going to feel comfortable coming into a public forum, traveling, exposing ourselves. None of us actually knows from day to day if we've been exposed, if we have the virus, if we don't have the virus. We simply don't have testing capacity to tell us that information. That's why, I wear a mask wherever I go if I have to go to the grocery store, because I worry that I may be infecting someone else. So there are many of us on this committee who are not comfortable traveling either, even if restrictions are lifted. And so that should not, I think, be the decider. We should, many of us are going to interview these candidates online and not in person. And for the reasons that Katie Dawson pointed out, Dr. Dawson, I'm convinced that we should probably stick to our original timeline.
Thank you for that. Other thoughts and comments?
I have a question. This is Rachel.
Go to Rachel.
I know that when Dr. Bruno announced his retirement, he was scheduled to step away in June with the hope that this election would be made before he officially retired. If the timeline were to be extended or affected by the COVID-19 precautions, at any point would we have to put an interim president in until the president was appointed, or how might Dr. Bruno's original timeline affect our decision making?
Yeah, so Rachel, it should not impact this particular decision. There would need to be an interim put in place for approximately 90 days if that were the case. And of course, the board would approve the placement of that interim.
Okay.
That's a great question.
Thank you.
I think Mr. Perkins had some comments.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Henderson. I definitely agree with Ms. McEvan, what she stated, and I did read the correspondence that came out just from a historical standpoint, not traditional, but historical standpoint of it, is that, as we know, the most important thing that we can do is select the president of a university. And I definitely understand the health concerns. And I'm trying to figure out where is a middle ground in between there, because when we start talking about not being able to have student engagement level with who may be the next president that may serve from 5 to 10 years, that's a big thing. When the stakeholders are not going to have an opportunity to engage these possible persons, it makes a big difference. Same thing with alum. And I know that we're in unprecedented times, but a lot of that piece of it makes a big difference in who we decide as being the president. I know from the previous searches that we've done, those were very, very critical pieces of it. And, not to eliminate that piece strictly just because we want to get ahead of the online piece or whatever. And I definitely understand the health concerns, trust me, as far as the travel. But to me, it seems like there needs to be some either middle ground or something that still allows, if there's a possibility, for some in-person interaction. Because when you start talking about, especially the student aspect of it, to say already we may pick a president while they're not even in school is already a little troublesome for me, even if we were on without COVID-19. because generally speaking, we normally had a lot of student involvement and participation in the selecting of previous presidents. But that being said, where there will be a very lack of student participation is big. And when you start talking about the community involvement and you start talking about the engagement of alum, it's a big factor. And for me, it's difficult just to just completely scrap the idea that there will not be some form of engagement when it comes on to campus. And I understand that we don't know what's going to happen on August 17th, but I don't think we even know what's going to happen on May 17th. So I'm very reluctant in completely scrapping that. And as of right now, I will probably be in favor of item number 3.
If you want to make comments, please raise your hand and Ann will identify you if that's okay. Because Ann, I can't see everybody with some things on my screen, if that'd be great. That's Sean Murphy.
Yes, sir. Al, I agree with you. And just for letting you know my position, I would go with option 3 as well. That's all I got.
So we'll go to Liz Pierre and then we'll go to Hannah Livingston after that. And then Lola.
Yeah, I agree. I understand Ms. Methvin's concerns. I think we're 4 months removed from that, and there may still be some issues going on at that time, but I just know from the previous searches that I've served on that the input that came from the stakeholder meetings, and these were stakeholders talking to us after their meetings with the presidential candidates, they found it so invaluable. They found it enlightening, and I think to miss that portion of it, and I think some of that would be missed in a video type setting. I think if we need to put precautions in place, but I think it just added so much to the search, and the stakeholders' comments to us afterwards added a lot to my feelings about the candidates as well. So I would be in favor of the third option.
Liz, I appreciate that very much. We'll go to Hannah Livingston and then to Lola Donahoe, and then I believe Dennis Blunt would weigh in after Lola. That's okay. Hannah?
My comments would just be, have we considered a middle ground? So not option 1, not option 3, but look at an option 2. We do have Fayette Ewing Coliseum on ULM's campus. That would provide for people to sit in a chair, distance themselves so many feet on either side and above and below, to be able to come and engage in stakeholder meetings. It's also 2020, so we have a lot of technology that's available where we could give them a cell phone text number or something as they're sitting in the stands to text a comment or question to be asked of the candidate. As far as students, I think that if we're asking our students to go online to complete their coursework for the remainder of the year, then we need to be able to meet them in the middle somewhere for this process. We pushed our students online, but now we don't want to conduct a meeting or an interview of a candidate online. And so I think we have to take that into consideration too. I feel like that if students are going to engage, they're going to engage online at this point because they've been doing it for 2 months already, or at least 6 weeks. And so I think that if we could find a middle ground to allow for the stakeholders to come, maybe not May 18th, maybe we do have to push that date back, but I really think that we're going to be hindering the next president, whoever that is, if we push their start date back to October the 1st, considering the things that are to come, which could be budget issues, changes in programs and classes and all of that. If we could get them in before the start of school to have a little bit of a tap time to kind of get some of that worked out, then I think it would be better, but that's just my opinion. So thank you.
Thank you, Hannah. We'll go to Lola Donahoe.
Well, as you know, at the first meeting, that was my major concern, or one of my major concerns, was getting the new president positioned so he could, start the year and get all of his work done. However, this has changed everything for me because the students' input is invaluable. Now, whether they choose to be present or do it online or whatever, but the opportunity to do that, I think, is just invaluable. And then also the other stakeholders, community leaders, alum, whomever, as long as they feel like we're being very transparent, we're being very accommodating, we're not rushing to judgment. I just feel like number 3, and honestly, we could be looking at a 4th option, come July, and may have to reevaluate that even. Our universities have successfully operated under interims. It's not ideal, but it certainly is doable. That's my comment.
Appreciate that, Loa. We'll go to Dennis Blunt. And then and I'm not to put her on the spot, but I'd also love to hear the faculty perspective from Dr. McDaniel. But Dennis Blunt.
Thank you, Dr. Henderson. And it is glad to see everyone back together virtually. Obviously, we don't have a problem meeting and discussing matters and even conducting some interviews virtually. I think I've been a part of my law firm's recruiting since 2003, and we have even telephonically, before video conferencing capability was a thing, we have interviewed lawyers all over the country virtually, either from the standpoint of a firm merger or from the standpoint of associate recruitment. So it's a possibility. It's not optimal, but we have, in the history of my firm, which is 160 years, I don't think that we've ever pulled the trigger on anyone without having laid eyes on them physically and had the opportunity for the partnership to have a real engagement, particularly at the partner level, around this is someone that you're welcoming into a leadership role in an entity, and I have to have some level of understanding of how they respond in real time, in face-to-face conversation. I need to be able to look someone in the eye and know that I understand a little bit of what makes them tick. With that said, as an alum, I would obviously feel a little bit more comfortable having had folks that will be directly impacted for 5 to 10 years to have had some physical interaction with someone that will be the leadership of something that is critical to an entire region of the state of Louisiana. With regard to having a virtual component, you can limit some folks virtually, but I would think that you can't pull the trigger without having had some level of one-to-one engagement. I certainly don't feel as a demographic, part of a demographic that has been greatly impacted by COVID. I'm not anxious to re-engage physically with folks. I'm sorry, I have to call her Judge Methvin. I'm masked up wherever I go now, but I've also been on conference call with business leaders across the state, and am concerned that, let's put it this way, I was on a 30-minute conversation on an agenda item, and the health concerns were 5 sentences of the conversation, and the remainder of the conversation is how do we re-engage around getting things restarted. So with that push to get things restarted, I have a feeling that by August of 2020, things will look differently, whether we want them to or not, or whether I'm comfortable with where they are or not. With that said, I think, sort of the option 3 seems to make a lot of sense to me. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll go to Dr. McDaniel, then we'll go to Dr. James Wright. I think he raised his hand. Dr. McDaniel, not to put you on the spot, but I will.
No, thank you, Dr. Henderson. And I've already discussed this some with Dr. Henderson, and he has me very much convinced that option 3 is really going. You convinced me.
Goodness.
Option 3 is our I really also believe it's our best option. Our faculty and staff have been expressing to me this whole time that they want to be involved in this as much as possible. They do not want to feel left out, and they really would appreciate some variety of face-to-face on campus, even if it is limited, move to the Coliseum, even if we have to have live stream of the interviews so that everybody doesn't have to be in the room together. They really want some component of that traditional interview process.
Well, Dr. McDaniel, I appreciate that. And just to be clear, not trying to convince you of anything, I can play devil's advocate.
Okay.
And if you take another position, I would have tried hard to push you the other way. That there are benefits and consequences to any of the decisions that you make on this. Whether it's the timeline, whether it's the physical interaction with students, and so I don't think there's a wrong answer, right? I think that it's just you have to weigh the risk and benefits and consequences of all of them. But I greatly appreciate that.
I'm a little afraid our students might feel just a bit surprised if they showed up in fall campus with the new president and had kind of, because they're struggling right now. They're having a hard time feeling plugged into the university.
It could. And so after Dr. Wright, perhaps I'm going to put Olivia Bailey on the spot as well and ask her maybe to weigh in on that. But Dr. Wright, thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Yes.
I was just going to say, we're talking about an issue, like you said, where we can really agree with everyone's answer as far as this situation goes in some form or fashion. But I would just say my personal feelings is I would agree with Mr. Perkins and in the fact that if you eliminate the in-person piece, I think for one thing, I think it would be considered maybe not as transparent as we would like it to be, to the public. And it's one thing to interview somebody, virtually. It's another thing to get somebody in person. We can see them, and more importantly, they can see what they're going to be inheriting. And I think, and bear in mind, I go to the hospital every day except for today, of course. And so I see what's going on kind of firsthand. But I think if we find a good middle ground, leaning towards an in-person interview, I think would be probably the best option going forward. Number 3.
It's good input. Olivia Bailey, I'd hate to put you on the spot, but just like with Dr. McDaniel, I'm going to. Would you care to give us a student's perspective?
Yeah, so as collecting data from the students, I think one of their main concerns is that they do want a president that engages with students regularly. And for that to happen, they need to see the future president on campus and interacting with them, because that is a huge thing at ULM, just having that personal interaction. And I think the same thing that Mr. Wright was saying, like it's a two-way street. I think the president needs to come to ULM's campus and see if it's a good fit for them, because they could get to the campus and realize it's not what they expected, and the faculty and the students aren't what they expected either. And so I'm gonna have to go with option number 3 too, if it was up to me, just because I think that it's very important, because people do interview different on Zoom than they do in person, and they interact different, their gestures are different. And so I think to get that long-term result that we're wanting, we need to just wait it out a bit and really see the results.
Other comments, and Ann, if you could help me, or Caitlin, help me identify any member of the committee that wants to speak. Yeah, Mimi, thank you, Supervisor Methvin.
Thank you, and I appreciate all the very thoughtful comments, and I want to make clear that when I advocated for sticking with the current timeline, it was with the expectation that the community and the students would be fully engaged, that this is not going to be any kind of backdoor, strictly, virtual thing with the committee, that we have the technology, we have the ability to engage the community to make arrangements. But I also appreciate the ideas or the perspectives that it's important to have for the students and the community, as well as the committee itself, to see the person in in person. I'll just say, I think a lot of what colors everyone's perspective is what we all think is going to be the situation in August. And I guess I've just read John Barry's book about the 1918 pandemic too closely.
I've read that.
I am flexible, and I will go with what the majority want to do. I think option 3 is certainly a responsible position as well, but we have got to be prepared to get to that point and realize that we can't keep kicking the can down the road. If there's a second shutdown, we need to figure out a way to use the technology that we have to do the best we can to get a permanent leader in place.
I think that's very fair. I'm going to go to Mark Romero, but I also want to, since you just said something again, you mentioned Katie Dawson earlier, and some of the members of the committee may not know Katie well. She is, we have 9 people around the state at universities that are in a similar role to Katie. And she is one of the most progressive, innovative directors of online learning, I dare say, in the country. And she's certainly a tremendous asset to ULM. And so anytime she speaks, I give a lot of deference to that as well. So Mimi, thank you for bringing her comments up. At this point, I'll go to Mark Romero.
Thank you, Dr. Henderson. And I certainly want to express appreciation to all of the members of our committee. I know that, flexibility and having a willingness to adjust is important, particularly at this time. We all engaged in a comprehensive quality search that we believe will yield the absolute best future president that we can appoint to lead ULM in the future. I know that we're also expressing sentiments around sensitivity to engage our students, stakeholders, and alike. And I believe that mutual engagement in a more traditional way is something that's real important at this time. And I think that the takeaways that are going to be born on each side will help solidify the decision that ultimately will be made. I really am in line with the consensus of this committee that the best option at this time is to proceed with option 3 and know that if things change, we're going to work together. We're going to make good leadership decisions and we'll make some adjustments. But I think to go forward with a solid plan that maybe has a greater bearing to avoid interruption or having a reset again might be a good one, and really appreciate the comments that were made. We've gotten feedback from the Alumni Association, from the Athletic Foundation. All of those individuals are expecting us to make a good decision, and I really think that adjusting option 3 will help enable that. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Romero. I don't see any other members requesting recognition. And you'll forgive me, this is the first time that we've done this in a formal meeting, so I apologize for that. So if I'm understanding the will of the committee, it appears that a motion is in order to change the schedule for this committee to invite semifinalists for in-person interviews the week of August 17th. If that's the case, we would entertain a motion to that.
I'll make a motion. Motion to adopt option number 3 that we discussed, moving the interview process into the August 7th time period.
August 17th. August 17th.
August 17th, I'm sorry, time period.
I'll second that motion.
So we have a motion by Mr. Perkins and a second by Mr. Murphy. Mr. Perkins, August 7th is my anniversary, so that one would have to be vetoed. So
hey, you spend all your other special days with us, man. You might as well throw the anniversary in with us.
So Erica, if you would call the roll of the voting members for a yes is to adopt the schedule so that on-campus meetings with stakeholder groups and this committee, the interview with this committee, the week of August 17th. So an I vote is in favor of that. So Erica, if you'd call the roll.
Yes. Ms. Donahoe?
Yes.
Ms. Laudiger?
Yes.
Ms. Methvin?
Aye.
Mr. Murphy?
Yes.
Dr. McDaniel?
Yes.
Mr. Perkins?
Aye.
Ms. Pierre,
Yes.
Mr. Romero,
Yes.
it is unanimous.
So thank you. I did just get a notice that Sarah Bryce just sent a message asking to speak. And Sarah, I apologize for that, but please, if, would appreciate your input.
Jim, just one comment, and considering the action of the committee, I didn't want to make this statement in advance. We'll obviously realize a change in our student board member. For continuity purposes, I would offer that I want to continue to have Rachel Laudiger participate on the committee. It may transition to a non-voting committee member based on our bylaws, but we want to vet that. But obviously we'll be receiving a student member once those selections are made at the campus level. But just wanted to share with the committee, in consideration of the ongoing plans and the change we just approved, I want to invite Rachel to continue. And again, we may end up with an additional member as a result of that.
Thank you, Mr. Romero. And for the sake of the committee and for the community at large, the student members of the UL System Board have all the rights, privileges, and responsibilities of any board member that sits on the board. They're a full voting board member. Our bylaws require that a student board member serve on the selection committee. Unfortunately, their terms typically end in June. And so we will, Mr. Chairman, we will make the necessary provisions with council to ensure that Rachel can continue to serve, as well as get the voice of her successor as the student board member. Appreciate that input.
Thank you, Dr. Anderson.
Yes, sir. So at this point, I'd like to recognize Sarah Bryce, who had a comment.
Oh, it's fine. I did just want to mention that I think every day that president's office sits vacant is challenging for the entire community. So I did like Hannah's recommendation of some sort of hybrid approach and to reassess as we get further into this process. As you guys know, I work for a very large health system here in the Dallas area. So I'm right in the thick of it too. So we definitely want to be careful and cautious as we go through this process. But I also think that if we're able to move the timeline up at a point in time when it's appropriate, that we should relook at that as well.
I think it's very valuable input, and also for the sake of the committee and for the community. You know, one of the responsibilities, the chief responsibility of the UL system is to manage all 9 of these institutions. And so any decision that that affects the presidency, we have to take responsibility for. We have to ensure that it does not damage the institution at all. And so when it comes to determination of identifying leadership to have on the campus in support for the faculty, the staff, and the students of that institution, we'll have to make those provisions and ensure that we move forward. And, you know, also with the recognition that this decision is one that's going to impact this institution and this community for the next decade and longer. And but your remarks are very welcome, and I appreciate that very much. Members, thank you all for that. And now we move to section 5, which is the review of applications. I'm sorry, did Olivia raise her hand? Olivia, did you raise your hand?
Oh, no, that was for the last comment. Sorry.
Oh, I got you. My text is a little bit slow. I think I'm eating up all the bandwidth on my home AT&T Wi-Fi, which is quite, I have to say that for Sonia Perez every time. Anyway, we'll move to the review of applications. One of the purposes of today's meeting is to review applicant materials and to select candidates to interview for the position of president of University of Louisiana at Monroe. Now, if you'll recall, the committee was formed shortly after Dr. Nick Bruno announced that he would be leaving in June after serving as the 8th president of ULM and during a remarkable period. Per our board rules, the search committee held its inaugural meeting at ULM and accepted its charge, approved an advertisement and a tentative timeline. The committee also held a public forum on the campus and heard from a variety of constituencies concerning their wants and needs for ULM's new leader. Since that time, we have placed advertisements in the Chronicle of Higher Education, Diverse Issues in Higher Education, Higher Ed Jobs, Women in Higher Education, and the Journal of Blacks in Higher Education. We also launched an extensive search website with information about the position and university, as well as video of the public forum. After a careful vetting of materials received by individuals, we have identified 18 candidates for your consideration today. The system staff and Dr. Vicki Gentry have been extensively researching each applicant, and this time I would like to provide the committee with a report on the candidate pool. A copy of each candidate's letter of interest and vita were placed on the system's website. The following candidates are recommended for your consideration. Catrice Albert, who is the founder and principal of Third Eye Consulting Group, LLC, and recently served an appointment as vice president with the NCAA. Ronald Berry, who is the dean of the College of Business and Social Sciences at the University of Louisiana at Monroe. Stephen Condon, who's the chancellor and professor of education at Piedmont International University. Joe DeLapp, who's the provost, vice president for academic affairs, and a tenured professor at Athens State University. Nara Gavini, executive director of Massachusetts General Hospital. Maurice Gibson, the vice chancellor and formerly chief diversity officer at Arkansas State University. Daniel Heimerman, provost and vice president for academic affairs at the University of Texas in the Permian Basin. Timothy Holcomb, associate professor and fellow of the Farmer School of Business at Miami University. Joby John, the Tom Galloway Endowed Professor of Marketing at University of Louisiana at Lafayette, and formerly Dean and Professor of Marketing at UL Lafayette. Janine Kahn, who is the Provost and Vice President for Academic Affairs at the University of Louisiana System. Julia Letlow, the Executive Assistant to the President for External Affairs and Community Outreach at the University of Louisiana at Monroe. Edward Markle, an attorney and partner and general owner of Markle and Associates. James Marquardt, Special Assistant to the President and formerly Provost and Vice President for Academic Affairs at Lamar University. Sherry McMahon, the Provost and Vice President for Academic Affairs at California State University, Fullerton. Alberto Ruiz, the Vice President for Academic Affairs at University of Louisiana at Monroe. Daniel Sniff, the Executive Director of Academic Partnerships and Academic Professional Professor in the College of Environment and Design at the University of Georgia. Ivy Taylor, a consultant for J.L. Powers and Associates and the former mayor of San Antonio, Texas. And Kiyomo Rita Ugachukwu. She is the Provost and Vice President for Academic Affairs at Cabrini University. In summary, all of these candidates have senior administrative experience, and one has experience as a chancellor. 6 of the candidates currently work in Louisiana, and 3 are internal candidates that currently work at ULM. That concludes my public summary of the candidates, but because I have more information of a personal nature regarding candidates, it would be necessary for us to convene an executive session consistent with state law. Do any members of the committee have questions? Olivia, I know you had some survey results from students that you wanted to report?
Yeah, Jim, I can go ahead and share those.
Please.
So we conducted a survey just basically asking the students what they think are the most important qualities in the new president, because we weren't able to have most of them come to the forum because of COVID-19 and everything going on. I'm just going to go over the top results going 1 through 5 of the most common answers. So for the first question, it was, what important characteristics would you like to see the new ULM president possess? Number 1, does not highlight just one area of the university. 2, will fight for the good of ULM. 3, cares for the students and will be involved. 4, a servant leader. And 5, respected. The next question they were asked was, what do you believe to be an area of the university that the new president should be focusing on? Number 1, the students think that athletics should be the main focus. 2, academics. 3, Greek life. 4, renovating campus facilities. And 5, the relationship with the community. The next question was, what qualifications on one's application do you think is most beneficial to ULM? The first one was educational background or a previous college administrator. 2, business experience. 3, familiar with ULM. 4, an alumni of ULM. And 5, from the NELA area. And then we asked them, who would your ideal president resemble, such as a figurehead? Number 1 was Barack Obama. 2, Ron Berry. 3, Dr. Bruno. 4, Donald Trump. And the most common comments were one that gets things done and fights for the students.
That's great.
And then last, it was, please tell us the important qualities of the new ULM president. So the most wanted quality of the ULM president would be a president that engages with students regularly. The next was someone that's familiar with the community of ULM's campus. The next one was a president who has a new perspective of the university. And then who's outgoing and a great public speaker was the fourth, and last being a president who is active on social media.
Perfect. Thank you for that. That's very useful. Any other comments from the committee or questions from the committee? I know that we have 2 public comments, and Erica Calais will moderate those. Erica?
Yes, sir. The first one is from Madison Nicole Hernandez. She is a student at University of Louisiana at Monroe. And her email reads, "Hello, my name is Madison. I am a sophomore at ULM. Something I am wondering about potential presidential candidates in regard to ULM is how will they view arts programs? Will they do anything further? Will they do anything to further the arts programs at ULM? Will they help bring back more arts classes? Will they help foster more arts opportunities on campus?" The second comment is from Mr. Mike McGee. And his email reads, "Given the already diminishing numbers in attendance at ULM's sporting events and in college athletics as a whole, how would the president propose to increase the numbers and enhance the fan experience? COVID-19 will only enhance these issues. So how will the president lead the university to a better fan base with all the other factors involved?" That's it. Thank you.
2 very good questions. Thank you very much for that. At this time, I would ask that the committee meet in executive session pursuant to revised statute 42, section 17, to discuss the personnel matters in association with this presidential search. While in executive session, the committee may meet with its staff, its legal counsel, or other persons it deems necessary. No motions or other action may be taken while in executive session. May I have a motion and a second to go into executive session?
I move that we go into.
So moved by Ms. Pierre, seconded by
Rachel.
Rachel Lotiger. Erica, if you
Dr. Henderson?
Yes.
Hey, this is Caitlin. It looks like we have someone wanting to make a public comment.
Okay.
Deborah Goldman, a faculty member at the university.
So if it's okay with the board, we will go ahead and hear the public comment. Erica, if you would moderate that.
Just a moment.
Thank you.
Okay, I think she will speak on her own behalf, I think. Is that right, Caitlin?
I believe so. I'm looking to get her into the video. Where is she? Deborah, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. I can't see my video, but I hope you can hear me.
Yeah, we can hear you well, Dr. Goldman, but if you look on your bottom of your screen, there should be a video button. Perhaps?
Ah, yes.
Hey, wonderful.
Not working so far.
That's okay. Well, we can hear you just fine. If you would go ahead.
There it is. Start my video.
There we are. We have you.
My comment relates to the fact that it's my belief that we need a president who has demonstrated academic success. When the board made its initial announcement, it stated that it was seeking a president who had academic and senior administrative success. However, when I look at the list of the desired presidential qualities, I don't see that there's a really sufficient emphasis on the idea of academic success. We need a president who understands academia and teaching, someone who has been in the trenches. Ask any local business owner and they're going to tell you that when they hire somebody, they want them to start in the trenches and learn the business. Mr. Mike McGee, a senior vice president for First National Bank, came and spoke to our finance majors. He said, "I want to hire you and I'm going to start you as a teller. I want you to start in the trenches because you got to understand the idea of bank customers. And you learn that idea on a Friday afternoon in the teller line." So the trenches for a university is the idea of teaching. We need someone who has been an assistant professor, an associate professor, a full professor, somebody who's been the head of a department, who's been the director of a school, and who's been a dean of a college. We need somebody who has extensive teaching experience. They need to have that in order to truly understand what it is to teach, what the mission of the university really is. It's the idea that we have to gain a student's trust, but after we gain it, we have to push them. We have to make them uncomfortable. Nothing worth learning is easy. And we have to have a president that understands that. And with COVID-19, it's really clear we need a president who understands online education. And more than just understanding it from a philosophical standpoint. We need somebody who's actually developed online classes, somebody who's taught them, somebody who actually knows that it is difficult to convey information online oftentimes. They need to understand the challenges and the benefits of it. And unless you have done it, and I have done it, you don't really understand what it takes to gain that trust online and then how to push a student online. We also need somebody who is going to keep and maintain academic integrity. Because if we don't maintain value in our programs, we're not going to be here. Because you can have fundraising, you can have athletics, you can have everything, but if your degrees aren't worth anything to the public, you aren't anything. So we need a president who understands teaching, and we need one that's got the experience. Thank you.
Dr. Goldman, thank you very much for your comments. They are certainly well received, and we greatly appreciate your participation in the process. It matters. Thank you very much. So members, we have a motion and a second. Erica, if you will call the roll, yes vote is to meet in executive session. Erica.
Yes, sir. Ms. Lola Donahoe?
Yes.
Ms. Rachel Laudiger?
Yes.
Ms. Methvin?
Yes.
Mr. Murphy?
Yes.
Dr. McDaniel?
Yes.
Mr. Perkins?
Yes.
Ms. Pierre?
Yes.
Mr. Robbins, forgive me, Mr. Romero?
Yes.
It is unanimous.
Erica, thank you. The committee will now meet in executive session. Ann, it's yours to take away.
Hello. Anybody there? Nope.
Yes, trying to figure out if we're supposed to leave or not.
No, I would be here a little while.
Yeah, I didn't know if we were supposed to stay or leave or what.
I think we can stay on.
Yeah, except for my video has been disabled. I'm not special.
Mine
Hey,
too.
everyone, this is Cami. I just want to remind you that this is being live streamed on YouTube. So anything you say is being live streamed. Thanks.
Thank you.
Good to know. I think I'll go unmute or go mute back.
Mr. Salter, can you hear me?
This is not Salter. This is Mayo.
Oh, Mr. Mayor, you are not in the room yet. What phone number did you call in on?
Oh, 318-372-6653.
Okay, Ann is going to add you to the room now.
Okay, thank you.
Absolutely.
So that's what you were asking. That you to add you to the room.
Mr. Mayor, I apologize. What is that number again?
Just the last 4 digits.
Yeah.
318-372-6653.
Mr. Salter, are you there?
Salter, have you joined us?
Yes.
Okay, I'm going to put you in there now. Mr. Moore?
Yes.
Hi, okay, I have found you. I'm gonna put you over into the meet, into the executive session.
Okay, thank you.
I need some more tea, honey. I need more tea. I need.
before I do.
I want to remind all members that as you return to this room, you will be muted automatically. You will need to unmute yourself when it's time to speak.
Thank you, Ann. And Ann, if you would be so kind as to let me know when everyone is in the new room.
Dr. Henderson, it appears that all have left the executive session room.
Thank you, Ann.
You're welcome.
All right, may I have a motion and a second to reconvene in open session?
I so move.
Moved by Ms. Donahoe. Second by Mr. Murphy. Erica, if you'd call the roll, all in favor say aye.
Okay. Ms. Donahoe?
Aye.
Ms. Laudiger?
Aye.
Ms. Medvin?
Aye.
Mr. Murphy? Mr. Murphy? We lost him. Dr. McDaniel?
Aye.
Mr. Perkins?
Aye.
Ms. Pierre?
Aye.
Mr. Romero?
Aye.
Mr. Salter?
Aye.
6, 7, 8 yes.
Thank you very much. The
You're
ULM's
welcome.
Presidential Search Committee of the Board of Supervisors for University of Louisiana System met in executive session to discuss personnel matters related to ULM presidential search. While in executive session, no motions were made nor votes taken. We held a very thorough and thoughtful discussion about the candidates while in executive session. And before we make any motions, I'd like to open the floor to let any committee members to share observations regarding the candidate pool that they would like to make. Hearing none, are there any public comments at this time, Erica?
No, sir.
So do we have a motion regarding the candidates?
Yes, Dr. Henderson. At this time, I'd like to move that we do 3 things: that we update, that we meet again on May 18th to do 3 things: to update the candidates of the change in the presidential search schedule, to do a deeper background check into the candidates, and also to narrow the field of candidates for consideration for the presidential search.
We have a motion to reconvene on the 18th to give us time to alert the candidates of the new process schedule, to do a deeper background check, and on the 18th to select the candidates to be invited to campus for stakeholder group interviews and committee interviews.
Correct.
Is there a second to this motion?
I'll second.
Second by Judge Methvin. Is there any discussion? Is there any public comments? Erica?
I don't see where we have any. No, sir.
Erica, if you would take a roll call vote, yes is to schedule a meeting on the 18th for those 3 purposes that were articulated.
Yes, sir. Ms. Donahoe?
Yes.
Ms. Laudiger?
Yes.
Ms. Medvin?
Yes.
Mr. Murphy? Dr. McDaniel?
Yes.
Mr. Perkins?
Yes.
Ms. Pierre?
Yes.
Mr. Romero?
Yes.
Mr. Salter?
Yes.
Yes, we have 8 yes.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Motion passes. Is there any other business to come before the committee today? If not, then we'll need a motion and a second to adjourn. Do we have a motion?
Motion.
Moved by Mr. Romero,
Second by Rachel.
second by Rachel Laudiger. All in favor? Erica, we have to have a roll call vote, or we have to stay in the Zoom meeting for the rest of the day. So,
Like that. Okay, Ms. Donahoe,
Yes.
Ms. Laudiger,
Yes.
Ms. Methvin,
Yes.
Mr. Murphy, Dr. McDaniel,
Yes.
Mr. Perkins,
Yes.
Ms. Pierre,
Yes.
Mr. Romero,
Yes.
and Mr. Seltzer.
Yes.
Okay, it is unanimous.
Erica, thank you. Thank you to the committee members. Thank you to the members of the public for engaging in this extraordinarily important process. We look forward to reconvening on the 18th. We are adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Have a great one.
Thank you. Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.